Hello, I am Eddie O'Sullivan, and this is This Week in the Italian Campaign. This Week in the Italian Campaign, brought to you by the Freedom for Italy Network, Episode 60, the attacks by the South African Armoured Division and 13 Corps in the northern Apennines, and the 8th Army's advance to the River Ronco. While 2 Corps had been attempting to break through German lines into the Po Valley in the final 2 weeks of October, the other Allied formations maintained pressure across the Italian front line. In conjunction with the 2 Corps' attack on the 16th of October, the 6th South African Armoured Division resumed its advance along the ridge between the Reno and the Sette Valleys. The 12th South African Motorized Brigade pressed northeast 2 miles to Monte Salvaro and continued to Monte Sole to outflank the Monte Remici hill mass. For 2 days, the Royal and Natal Carabiniers and the 1st City Cape Town Highlanders attacked north of the road from Grizzana to Vergato. On the morning of the 19th of October, the Witwatersrand Regiment captured Hill 806, 800 yards from the crest of Monte Salvaro. The following day, 11 German counterattacks were repulsed. The 1st Battalion, the Scots Guards in 24 Guards Brigade, cleared part of Monte Alcino and took the peak the next day. Monte Salvaro was captured in a divisional attack on the 23rd of October, and the Scots Guards occupied Monte Termine the next morning. Plans for the Guards to capture Monte Sole immediately were abandoned following heavy rain, which led to Setter Creek bursting its banks and cutting off the brigade's advance units. On the division's left flank, Combat Command B had continued to push north along Highway 64 from Paretta and captured Bombiana on the 13th. On the 16th of October, the 2nd Battalion of 370 Infantry relieved the 11th Armoured Infantry Battalion and with tank support took Palazzo. At the end of October, the Germans still held Monte Sole, but the South Africans and Combat Command B had bolstered 2 Corps' left flank. 13 Corps' role on the right was to relieve pressure on 2 Corps and keep the 334, 715 and 305 Grenadier Divisions pinned down. On the 18th of October, 38 Irish Brigade in 78th Division was relieved by 61 Brigade of 6th Armoured Division in the Monte Capello area east of the Santerno. With the 36th and 11 Brigades, the Irish Brigade took over positions around Gesso Ridge, which had been captured by 351 Infantry of 88th Division. The 78th Division was ordered immediately to capture Monte della Pieve, Monte d'Acqua Salata, and Monte Spaduro as part of the effort to support 2 Corps' assault that day against Monte Grande north of the Silaro. The attack started the next morning with 36th Brigade aiming for Monte d'Acqua Salata. 5 Buffs to the north and the 6th Royal West Kents on the south made no progress. That night, 2 companies of the 1st Battalion of the Royal Irish Regiment passed through the 2nd Battalion of the Lancashire Fusiliers to take Spaduro. They were overwhelmed by a German counterattack at dawn the next day. On the 23rd of October, 11 Brigade in 78th Division was committed to add weight to a fresh Irish Brigade attack. That night, the 2nd Lancashire Fusiliers reached the summit of Spaduro, and the 1st East Surreys cleared the ridge to the northwest. But the Germans continued to hold Monte d'Acqua Salata. The 5th Battalion of the Royal East Kent Regiment attacked to the north to outflank the peak, but it was held up east of Monte Spaduro. Heavy rain, which had begun on the 25th of October, soon bogged down all operations. 61 Brigade in the 6th Armoured Division advanced nearly 2 miles on the 25th of October south of the Santerno, but further action was postponed until Highway 6528 could be improved. The 1st Guards Brigade in 6th Armoured was relieved on Monte Battaglia by the British 1st Division on the 27th. In the Senio Valley, patrols from the division advanced to Casola Val Senio. The 1st Division had a narrow front in the Senio Valley, where it cleared the river's north bank and helped the 8th Indian Division on its right. On the 16th of October, 66th Brigade launched attacks that made only slight gains. It then turned north to take Monte della Valle, where it was relieved by the 2nd Brigade on the 29th. On the 16th of October, the 8th Indian Division had a front 10 miles wide. 21 Brigade was on the left, 17 Brigade was astride Highway 6521, and 19 Brigade was in reserve. The Punjab Regiment spearheaded the 21st Brigade attack on the 27th, followed by the Maratha Light Infantry and the 5th Battalion of the Queen's Own Royal West Kent Regiment. On the 22nd of October, following a general German withdrawal, 21 Brigade advanced again and reached Monte Colombo. These advances were matched by 26th Armoured Brigade along Highway 67. The 2 Polish corps took over the 10-corps zone on the 16th of October and began advancing along Highway 67 to Forlì. By the 22nd of October, it had also captured the Monte Grosso Massif and started to advance down the valleys of the Rabi and River Ronco rivers. Resistance in the mountains slackened on the 24th. By the 27th, the Poles were in Predapio and within 3 miles of Meldola, which 5 Corps was threatening from the east. On the Adriatic front by the 19th of October, formations of the Canadian Corps, which included the 2nd New Zealand Division and the 3rd Greek Mountain Brigade, had bridgeheads over the Pisciatello River and were poised to attack across the Savio, which was flooded and impassable to infantry. On the 20th, the 76th Panzer Corps carried out a withdrawal, and the paratroop division was pulled back to the Savio. That evening, Cesenatico was liberated. Britain's 5 Corps was advancing to Cesena from the south. The first successful crossing of the Savio was on the 20th of October, when a battalion of the 12th Brigade of the 4th Infantry Division, which had relieved the 46th Division in 5 Corps the previous day, waded the river south of Cesena. On the same day, the 10th Indian Division established a bridgehead at Roversano. North of Cesena, the Princess Patricia Light Infantry in the 2nd Canadian Brigade waded the river at Maturano, but was repulsed. A brigade attack on a wider front was ordered. The Seaforth Highlanders and the Loyal Edmonton Regiment started to wade across the Savio following a preliminary barrage at 10 o'clock at night on the 21st of October. To create a diversion, 71 tanks of the 18th and 20th New Zealand Armoured Regiments began firing in simulated support of an infantry crossing north of San Martino in Fiume. After midnight, reserves of the Seaforths and Edmontons crossed the Savio. 2 Seaforth companies moved west to Pieve Sistina and were attacked by 3 Panther tanks, 2 self-propelled guns, and about 30 infantry. They were driven back. For his bravery in the battle, Private Ernest Smith was awarded the Victoria Cross, the 3rd and last for a Canadian in the Italian campaign. Half a mile upstream, the Edmontons were 300 yards west of the river. A counterattack was repulsed. Now, by the morning of the 22nd of October, there was a bridgehead more than a mile deep and 1,400 yards wide in the Seaforth's sector. An attempt by the Princess Patricia and West Nova Scotia regiments of 3rd Brigade to establish a bridgehead for a bridge about a mile downstream from Martorano near Borgo di Ronta was repulsed. 8th Army Commander Richard McCreery directed that 5 Corps concentrate on maintaining the Canadian 2nd Brigade's bridgehead opposite Martorano. The rest of the Corps' operations were to be confined to active patrolling. The bridgehead created by the 12th Infantry Brigade west of the Savio at Cesena was strengthened on the 21st by the completion just above the town of a causeway out of arc bridges thrown across the riverbed. By noon, 7 British tanks were in the bridgehead. To the south, the Indians, with 2 bridges over the river, assaulted late on the 22nd behind an artillery bombardment and advanced 3 miles to seize Montecavallo, a height between the Savio and the Ronco. But by then, the German 10th Army had retired behind the Ronco. On the 22nd of October, 10th Army Commander Heinrich von Wichtenhoff gave 76 Panzer Corps Commander Traugott Herr permission, in the event of continued Allied pressure, to take his line back roughly 2 miles on either side of the Via Emilia to midway between the Savio and Bavano rivers. The next day it was decided that the 1st Parachute Division would join General Barra's 90th Panzer Grenadier Division on the 10th Army's right wing. Supreme Commander in Italy, Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, was injured in a car crash on the 23rd of October and did not return to control of operations until the middle of January. Von Wichtenhoff became Commander-in-Chief Southwest and took command of Army Group C. General Lemelson took over the 10th Army, being succeeded as commander of the 14th Army by General Heinz Ziegler. On the 24th of October, von Wichtenhoff said it was his intention to pull the 10th Army back during the next month to a permanent defence position from Bologna to the Comacchio Lagoon. That afternoon, von Wichtenhoff ordered a further withdrawal of the 76th Panzer Corps to a new holding line along the Ronco and Bavano rivers. Prompted by signs of the impending German withdrawal, the 1st Canadian Division had a Class 9 floating bridge ready for use at Martorano on the morning of the 23rd. A 60-foot low-level Bailey Bridge was completed immediately south of the demolished railway bridge by daylight. On the morning of the 26th, the Savio River swept away all crossings in the Canadian Corps sector. The Roman Ponte Vecchio in Cesena survived, and a broken arch was spanned by a bailey. On the 24th of October, Britain's 12th Infantry Brigade in the 4th Division attacked from its bridgehead and advanced along Via Emilia to reach the Ronco late on the 25th. In the Canadian sector, the lack of bridges slowed the pursuit. The Princess Patricia's covered only 2 miles on the 24th. At midnight, the Carleton and York Regiment drew level along the railway, and the 2 battalions crossed the Bavano. They reached the Ronco on the 26th, but the swift current kept Canadian patrols on the east bank. On the Canadian Corps' right, the 5th Armoured Division had relieved the New Zealanders on the 23rd of October. The next day, the Irish Regiment of Canada crossed the Savio at Mensa, and the Perth Regiment later crossed 2 miles upstream. By late afternoon on the 25th, the Cape Breton Highlanders and the Irish were at the Bavano. In the coastal sector, the Savio was crossed. After dark on the 25th, the 27th Lancers waded the river west of Castiglione to Cervia, while a company of Perths crossed near the broken bridge on the Via Adriatica. On the 27th of October, Allied commander in Italy, Harold Alexander, ordered the suspension of 5th Army operations. On the 28th, the Canadian Corps passed into reserve. By the 29th of October, it was apparent that Allied objectives would fall far short of the Adige line. The capture of Bologna and Ravenna was unlikely before the suspension of the campaign for winter. On the 30th, Alexander told Supreme Allied Commander in the Mediterranean, Henry Wilson, that the 8th Army would continue with 2 corps with its offensive along the Via Emilia to drive the Germans out of the salient between the Forli and Monte Grande, while advancing on Ravenna. Both armies would prepare for a combined effort during the first half of December against Bologna and Ravenna if it was not already in Allied hands. But all offensive operations would have to cease on the 15th of December to allow adequate time to prepare for the 1945 campaign.
Well, that episode brings us right up to the end of October, and you can see that basically the whole Allied campaign in Italy is running out of steam. The weather has gotten really bad. The German strength was still substantial, and the Allied commanders are now recognizing that unless they can get things done over the next month or so, that the whole campaign is going to have to be suspended. And that's exactly what happened. So next episode, we'll be dealing with some of the adjustments that have taken place following the advances in October. And we'll be looking ahead to what happens in 1945. So that's it. Before I go, I just want a couple of things for people who follow us. The first thing is that we've announced that is the Freedom for Italy Initiative, working with a newly formed organization called the Second World War Association, which is a non-profit initiative, trying to engage all those stakeholders with an interest in the Second World War. We're organizing a Peace in Europe conference to mark the 80th anniversary of the end of the war in Europe. And that's next May. It's at the London Scottish Museum. And we're going to have at least 25 speakers. It's going to be a wide-ranging conference, mainly looking at legacy and family stories. Details will be coming out fairly soon. And it's free admission is free for registered delegates. So you'll get more information about that soon. The second thing is that there's a peace walk that is going to take place in April between Monte Cassino and the Rome to mark the end of the war in Europe. And the walkers are aiming to be in Rome at the end of April to mark the 80th anniversary of that historic moment. And just one other thing before we go. I've just received this extraordinary tome. It's James Holland's latest book, Cassino 44, The Brutal Battle for Rome. A very substantial work, full of the extraordinary research and insights that James brings to bear on this topic. He is the foremost historian, certainly, on the Italian campaign, and we'll be looking at this book and what it contains in a future episode. So for the moment, that's it, but we'll be back next week with another episode. So from everybody here at the This Week in the Italian campaign, it's for the moment, it's goodbye, good luck, and may God bless you all.